of my favorite moments was a conversation I had with a lady at the Bowness open house. And this lady was actually from way the heck down in Douglas Glen. Deer Run. And she was talking to me about the flood and what the flood meant to her and how it had impacted her. And she was explaining to me that there was a beaver lodge that's behind her home. She lives on the river. And how the morning of the flood she watched the mother beaver go into the lodge, pick up the baby beavers and swim them out of the lodge and up the hill. And she said, and that's how I knew something was coming.
Everything we had been through to pull Stampede together, I will never forget jumping on my horse, riding down the parade route and seeing the vast sea of public wearing Hell or High Water t-shirts, pumping their fists in the air, screaming with great excitement that the Stampede was actually underway. That was a tremendously exciting moment for me after what we'd been through cleaning up the park. It felt like the community was there with us the whole time. So to see individuals cheering us on up and down the parade route, I realized that there was a lot of people that felt that we were a beacon of light at the end of a really tragic situation in Calgary. So that meant a lot to me and brought some tears to my eyes down the parade route.
I have so many images in my mind from the flood of 2013. The rivers running faster and higher and angrier than I've ever seen. People's lives piled up in front of their houses on their lawns. The devastation. But the image that will stick with me forever, the image I will never forget, is the image of that citizen. Covered from head to toe in mud and mosquito bites, cut and bruised and battered, working incredibly hard to save the house of someone she doesn't even know. That's Calgary, and that's what I will never forget.
Walking out of this building on Saturday and walking down to the Centre Street Bridge and looking at the water flow and actually hearing the water flow. Now, we had lots of cameras and good data coming in here, helicopter flyers, we were seeing all kinds of things in the room. But actually being able to physically go out there and see what the water was doing, see how far it had gone into the downtown, where it had gone, started to go down the streets. Despite as big as I thought when I was in here, when I went out there, I realized it was even bigger. And the second thing that I'll probably always carry with me is the morning we went up to McMahon Stadium and we put out the call for 600 volunteers and the parking lot was full. And it allowed us to change the direction of how we did things as a municipality, because Emergency Management Convention says you register all your volunteers, you get them all to fill out sheets of paper, you track them, you make sure you know where they're going. We threw that book out the window, and we allowed the volunteers to self-organize as long as they went by bus to one of the community support centers. And once we did that, the outpouring and watching what people did was absolutely phenomenal.
It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and it had been a frenetic day leading up to that, the deployment of resources, the magnitude of the flood, the rapidity with which it came. So I was out after midnight, after about 1 o'clock, I was out driving around visiting officers at various points. And I was in Bowness on the Trans-Canada Highway, and I stopped the car and I got out because it had flooded that part of Shoaldice. But the roar of the river was terrifying. It was not the Bow River, that I grew up knowing. I've lived in this city my whole life. And it was at that point that wow, this river's doing a lot of damage to a lot of people and a lot of houses. It was just, I'll never forget it. Never forget looking over the bridge, parked on the bridge, and seeing and hearing how that river turned into a monster.